Shamash ishma amapipti pe ishu, ultu ulana umma, utu shamil tana sa'ashu. Oh, and don't mind me. I'm just brushing up on my ancient Sumerian. You know, the best part about speaking in a dead language is that who's going to correct you on your pronunciation? No one, that's who. Welcome to a very special episode of the podcast History of Our World. Chapter 6, The Epic of Gilgamesh. Today we'll be taking a little detour away from history and into culture as we listen to the story of Gilgamesh, the great Sumerian god king. Gilgamesh, as he was known to the Sumerians, was recorded on the king list as the fifth king of Uruk after the Great Flood. Historians believe that his rule is sometime between 2700 to 2500 BC, and amongst his achievements are building the walls of Uruk, which can still be seen today, averting war with Kish, and ruling for 126 years. That number actually seems like nothing compared to the antediluvian kings like Dumuzi, but Gilgamesh is most known for the epic story written about him and his friend Enkidu. This is a story written over 12 tablets, and at least 4 civilizations retelling it: the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and the Hittites. And there is no doubt that its account of the Great Flood was repeated by Semitic travelers in the Levant and Egypt. This is a hero myth that has many familiar themes: divinity, adventure, hubris, but can also seem disjointed at times, as you will no doubt see, or hear. This could be because the story is incomplete, but it can also be due to the nature of the storytelling. Lines tend to be repeated over and over for emphasis, and the dialogue of the characters can almost sound, well, like something out of the cartoon Speed Racer. I'll give you an example. If you did not wake me, why am I awake? Enkidu, my friend, I must have seen a dream. Did you wake me? Why, besides my first dream, I saw a second dream. You did not touch me. Why am I troubled? And then I saw the third dream. If you did not wake me, why am I awake? You see what I mean? This works out better reading the epic because it's portrayed in a more poetic fashion, as the characters repeat conversations or phrases to stress a point. For the purposes of telling the story on a podcast, well, I've transcribed for you my own version of it based on a few different translations and using the John Gardner version as my foundation. I've reworked much of the dialogue to sound more modern and tried to preserve the flow of the story. The names of the characters are their Babylonian counterparts, but I'll supply a roll call on the website. Oh, and some parts have been edited for content. Gilgamesh can be a bit NSFW at times, and hey, I'm trying to run a clean podcast here. However, don't let that stop you from picking up a copy. Do it. You'll be surprised. We'll discuss more about the meanings and themes later, but for now, get comfy for story time. The one who saw the abyss, I will make the land know. Of him who knew all, let me tell the whole story. I speak of Gilgamesh, who saw secret things, told knowledge of before the flood, traveled on roads exhausted, and recorded his works. He built the walls of Uruk, and beautified the ziggurat of Ishtar. He is the very paragon of strength, sublime and radiant. Is there anyone who can match him? Who amongst men can claim to be king? 2/3 god, 1/3 human. His father was the great Lugalbanda, his mother Ninsun. Yet for all his might, he is a brutal king, oppressing the weak, claiming the Lord's right with new brides, and constantly waging war, exhausting the city's men. The citizens of Uruk prayed to the gods for help, and Aruru, the earth goddess, answered their plea. From clay born in the wilderness, Enkidu was born. His body was covered in thick woolly hair, and atop his head he grew his hair long like a woman. He was clothed in hides and lived with the animals, eating as they do, and drinking from watering holes as they do. One day, a hunter spotted him at the watering hole, and saw how the animals flocked to Enkidu, preventing the hunter from bringing home food. He told his father what he saw, and his father told him to tell Gilgamesh of the news. He made his way to the palace, and approached his lord. "Mighty king, there is a wild and powerful man in our land. He eats grass with the animals, dwells at the watering holes, tears out my traps and allows my game to escape. He will not let me work, and I am too scared to confront him." Gilgamesh spoke.
"Hunter, take one of the priestesses of Ishtar, a temple courtesan, with you to the watering hole. When the wild man appears, have her remove her clothes and reveal her beauty. When he takes one look at her, he'll forget all about his animal companions."
The hunter thanked his king for such wisdom, and brought with him the priestess where they waited at the watering hole for the wild man to appear. Eventually the animals gathered to drink, and Enkidu, born of the earth, did as well, he who eats grass with the gazelles and drinks with wild beasts. At his appearance the hunter gave the command, and the courtesan removed her belt, allowing her robes to fall to the ground and reveal her feminine beauty. Enkidu was overcome with lust and fell upon her, and for 6 days and 7 nights they knew each other. As he lay with the priestess, she told him of the secrets of civilization and of the cities of man. But when Enkidu was finished with her, he turned around to leave and found his animals had abandoned him, for he was no longer free to roam as before. His knees grew weak at the sight, and he fell to the ground at what had befallen him. He looked up into the eyes of the temple courtesan with sadness and confusion. She cupped his face in her hands and spoke gently to him.
"You are now wise, Enkidu. Do not bother to run with wild beasts. Come with me instead to the great city of Uruk, to the holy house of Anu and Ishtar. There you will find Gilgamesh, our mighty and terrible lord, who like a wild bull is supreme above all."
Enkidu knew in his heart that she was right, and knew that in that city he would find the man he was meant to join.
"I will go with you back to the city, courtesan. We will travel to the house of Gilgamesh. I will call to him with great energy, and we will see how strong this bull of yours is. I will cry out that I am the strongest. I alone am the force that changes fate, he who was born in the wild."
The courtesan replied,
"Come then, let us go to the great city of Uruk, where people dress so finely, where every day there is a festival and the beautiful music of the harp and drum is played, where the temple priestesses are beautiful and every night perform their sacred rites to the citizenry. Yet you shall also meet Gilgamesh, handsome as he is extreme. He is stronger than you, Enkidu, because the gods love him and have taught him much. Even before you arrived, Gilgamesh has seen you in his dreams."
And the courtesan told Enkidu of Gilgamesh's conversation with his mother Ninsun.
"Last night there was a star in the heavens, and as it descended to earth, it fell atop me. I tried to lift it, but I could not. I tried to move it, but I could not. And then I saw the people of the city swarm around it, pressing up to it, hugging it, kissing its feet. Even I hugged it like I would a wife. And when I was able to move it, I moved it to your feet, mother, and you compared it to me."
Wise and ever-knowing Ninsun replied to her son,
"The star is your companion, my son. He falls on you when you are unable to move him. This means he is a powerful friend, able to save a friend. His strength is great like the gods, he who you hug like a wife. This is a friend who will be a great counselor to you until he must take his leave."
Gilgamesh spoke to his mother,
"May it come to pass. I will have a friend and advisor. This is the meaning of my dreams."
After she recounted this tale, Enkidu and the courtesan knew each other again. When they had finished, the priestess brought Enkidu to the house of shepherds, to show him the way of civilized life. They gathered around him, marveling at his appearance. "It is him! He is like Gilgamesh, and though shorter, he has stronger bones. Now Uruk will have reason to rejoice, for Gilgamesh's equal has arrived." Enkidu was given bread, which he gagged on, not knowing what cooked food tastes like. Then he was given beer, and Enkidu drank 7 jugs full, as his mind became soft and his heart and spirits were lifted. He then ate the cooked food, and washed himself with water, and was massaged with oil. Then he was given clothes and a spear. He had become a man. To thank the shepherds for their hospitality, he hunted the lions and wolves which kept them awake at night. Enkidu was now a mighty hero, and he and the temple courtesan were ready to leave for the city. As they made preparations, a man hastily approached the camp bearing a platter of fine food. Enkidu told the priestess to stop him.
"You there! Why do you hurry so?"
The citizen spoke. "I have been invited to a wedding, and have brought many delights for the ceremony, but he brings defilement down on this city. Gilgamesh will have the new bride first, and her husband will be second." Enkidu's face grew angry at these words, and he rushed off to the city, where he was met by the whole of Uruk. They gathered around him, pressing up to him, embracing him, even kissing his feet. Enkidu approached the threshold of the marital chamber and stood guard, blocking all entrance. Then suddenly, Gilgamesh appeared. Enkidu would still not budge, and so the two wrestled, locked together like wild bulls. Their force shattered the doorposts and shook the very walls of the city. Their fighting continued until finally, Enkidu is thrown to the ground, having lost to Gilgamesh. But though on bent knees, Gilgamesh forgets his anger, and Enkidu speaks.
Ninsun has given birth to a man without equal. Truly, you are king of your people, as Enlil the storm god has destined.
Enkidu's eyes watered, and he sighed mightily. Gilgamesh then spoke.
Friend, why do your eyes fill with tears? Why do you sigh so?
Enkidu replied,
Friend, my words are stuck in my throat, and my strength has turned to weakness.
They kissed each other as friends, took one another's hands like brothers. Gilgamesh took him to his mother Ninsun and spoke.
His strength is truly mighty. He is as mighty as the fallen star of Anu.
Ninsun invoked Shamash, god of justice, and said to him,
Enkidu has no father, nor has he a mother. No one cuts his wild hair, and no one raised him. But I give him my blessing that he will be a good companion for my son.
Enkidu heard this speech, and he sat down and wept. Gilgamesh embraced his new friend and spoke to him.
Come, why do you cry like this? Why do you lose your strength?
Enkidu revealed to him the source of his concern.
To guard the cedar forest, and to terrify mankind, Enlil has assigned him, Humbaba. His shout is as a flood, his mouth fire, his breath is of death. He can hear the footsteps of anyone who approaches his forest, and those who would go there are stricken with dread.
Gilgamesh spoke back to Enkidu.
Then let us travel to the cedar forest, where the fierce Humbaba lives. Let us kill him, you and me, and drive this evil from the land.
Enkidu replied,
Why do you wish this thing? We are no match for the juggernaut that is Humbaba.
Gilgamesh responded,
Who, my friend, can scale the heavens? Only the gods can live forever. As for man, their days are numbered, their achievements but puffs of wind. You who are afraid of death, who has lost your strength, so be it. I will go in front of you, and you can cheer me on. And should I fall, I will be known for my bravery, and they will say, It was Gilgamesh who fought the terrible Humbaba and perished. And you, my friend, you were born in the wilderness. You are experienced. Come, I will cut down the cedar tree and be known for eternity. Come, my friend, and let us gather weapons from my craftsmen.
And after they had gathered many weapons, the two met at the marketplace of Uruk and held counsel with the men of the city, whom Gilgamesh addressed and asked for their blessings. The city elders gave him a warning instead. You are young and hasty, Gilgamesh. Do not place all your faith in your strength. Trust in your companion, for he knows the way to the forest. He will make the way safe for you. Enkidu, we beseech you to keep our king safe and deliver him back to us. Gilgamesh clasped his friend on the shoulder and led him to the temple of Igalma to ask his mother Ninsun for her blessing. She purified herself and dressed in the sacred vestments to ask Shamash to keep her son safe. She then turned to Enkidu, placed a pendant around his neck, and spoke.
Enkidu the Mighty, you are not a child of my womb, but now in the presence of the high priestesses, the wives of Uruk's gods, now I adopt you.
Stocked with weapons and supplies, and with the blessing of Shamash, the two blood brothers made their way out of the land of Sumer, traveling 450 miles in just 3 days without stopping to eat. Finally, they reached the entrance to the great cedar forest. There they stopped and made camp, and offered prayers to Shamash that he might continue to protect them. For 3 nights, though, Gilgamesh had terrible dreams that made him fearful and upset. But Enkidu reassured him that his dreams were omens of victory. As they made their way through the vast forest, traveling on roads that Humbaba's giant tail had created, they finally came to the Cedar Mountain, the dwelling of the gods, whose shade was pleasant and plants beautiful. Gilgamesh knew his city would do well with such great timber, and so he set out to hew as many cedar trees as he could. But the chopping noise of the axe stirred to attention the forest guardian. and the ground shook louder and louder until at last Humbaba, the great monster, confronted the two friends.
Who has come and slighted the trees grown on my mountain and felled the cedar? Gilgamesh, why have you come to me? Because of the words of Enkidu? Feh! Only idiots give advice to each other. You listen to one such as he? Enkidu? Who does not know his own father? Who swims with turtles? Who has brought the king of Uruk to me? Gilgamesh, I will feed your flesh to the vultures.
At this, Gilgamesh grew alarmed, but Enkidu bolstered his spirits.
Do not run, my friend. Do not turn around. You must strike him even harder.
And the two companions charged at the great monster, engaged in a ferocious battle that shook the mountains and tore the ground asunder. They rained blow after blow atop Humbaba, to little avail, until kind and just Shamash answered their blessings and unleashed the 12 winds to ruin him. The monster could not move under the power of heaven, and was defeated. He sank to his knees, begging for his life.
O Lord of Uruk, King Gilgamesh, let me go, and I will be your servant. I shall cut down as many trees as you need, and build for you a fine palace.
But Enkidu spoke to Gilgamesh, saying,
My friend, do not listen to the words of Humbaba. His deceit is great. Best to kill him now and cut off his head.
Humbaba cast a glaring eye at Enkidu.
Such hate you speak to him. Why do you use such hateful words? You know the rules of the forest. I am the servant of Enlil, as you are Shamash, and he is mightier than your god. I could have slain you at the entrance, and fed your flesh to the vultures. But now, Enkidu, you hold my life in your hands. Speak to Gilgamesh that I might be spared.
Enkidu grew more impatient.
My friend, kill him! He has you under his spell. If the captured bird flies home, while the captured man is allowed to return to his mother, what will the gods and men say about you? They will not let you back in your city.
At this, Gilgamesh heeded his friend's words. He took out his axe and sword, and struck Humbaba in the neck, once, twice, 3 times before his head fell to the ground. Then they cut down more cedar trees, and came across one so immense and towering that they decided to build a new temple gate for Enlil out of it. They built a raft and floated down the Euphrates with the head of Humbaba and the giant trees. And so Gilgamesh returned to Uruk to wash the filth and grime of battle off him. When he had cleansed and purified himself properly, he covered himself with a regal cloak and donned his crown. To this the goddess Ishtar appeared before him.
Come, Gilgamesh, and be my husband that I might have you. If I were yours, I'd have golden chariots made for you, pulled by storm demons. We would dwell in a sweet-smelling cedar house. Priests would kiss your feet. Kings and princes would bend the knee to you, and the land would yield its bounty to you in tribute.
Gilgamesh spoke back to Ishtar.
And what would I give you in exchange? Do you need massage oil or clothing? What of my food and drink, you who eat the food and wine of the gods? And what would happen when your lust for me waned? You are a cooking fire that goes out in the cold, a door that keeps out neither wind nor storm, a palace that crushes its valiant warriors, a water skin that soaks its bearer, a battering ram that collapses an enemy land, a shoe that bites its owner's feet. Where are the lovers whom you have loved forever? Which of your little shepherds has continued to please you? Ha! See here as I recite their names for you. What of Tammuz, who is condemned to the underworld because of you, but you have ordered mourning for him every year? You loved a little bird, but hit him so hard you broke his wing. You loved the mighty lion, but dug for him an ambush pit. You loved the glorious stallion, but designed whip and chains to control him. And what of those who sought you instead? What of the shepherd who baked bread for you and slaughtered his goats for your attention? You turned him into a wolf so that his own kin would drive him off. And woe to those who reject you, that of Ishulana, who knew of your ways, so you turned him into a frog. And now you love me in turn and set my own fate? Ha 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 ha!
And Ishtar boiled over with unspeakable fury and flew to the heavens, going to Anu, her father, crying,
Father, Gilgamesh has insulted me. He's spoken vile things about me.
Anu spoke to his daughter.
Come now, was it not you who provoked Gilgamesh to recite your iniquities?
Ishtar growled at her father.
Father, give me the bull of heaven, that he might kill Gilgamesh where he lives. And if you do not, I will smash in the gates of the netherworld and make the dead rise to devour the living. Their numbers will swell until they overrun mankind. Of this I swear.
Anu addressed his daughter.
Ishtar, if you demand the bull of heaven, the people of Uruk will starve for 7 years. Have you prepared for this?
Ishtar responded that she had indeed filled the granaries of Uruk and made the grasses grow for the animals. So Anu handed the nose rope of the bull of heaven to her, and she let it down to the earth. At its snort, a huge pit opened up, and 100 men fell in. At the second snort, another hole opened, and 200 men fell in. At its third snort, another hole opened, and Enkidu fell in, but was able to leap out and seize the bull by the horns as the animal sprayed spittle in front of him, excrement behind. Enkidu shouted to Gilgamesh,
Friend, we must be bold. How shall we overthrow him? But wait, with my strength I will grab him, and you must stick him.
And so Enkidu grabbed the tail of the bull and held firm, as Gilgamesh, like a skilled butcher, struck his sword into the nape, through the neck, and slew the beast. Then they ripped out its heart and offered it to Shamash before sitting down from exhaustion. Ishtar went up to the walls of Uruk and spoke.
Curse Gilgamesh, who has slandered me and killed the bull of heaven.
Enkidu turned to face her and responded,
If I could reach you, I'd do the same to you. I'd hang its guts over your arms.
As Ishtar gathered her priestesses to mourn the bull, Gilgamesh assembled his artisans and craftsmen to fashion fine items from the remains. Then the two friends washed their hands in the Euphrates before returning to the streets of Uruk, where Gilgamesh spoke to the men of the city.
Who is the bravest of heroes, the boldest of men? Gilgamesh is the bravest of heroes, and Enkidu the strongest of men.
And that night they had a great feast. But while everyone slept, Enkidu woke from a disturbing dream. He turned to speak to his friend.
I saw Anu, Enlil, and Shamash at a council, and heard them in mid-talk, as Anu addressed Enlil.
Because they killed the bull of heaven and Humbaba, they must die!
And then Enlil said,
Let Enkidu die, but not Gilgamesh.
But Shamash interjected, saying,
It was at my command that they killed Humbaba and the bull. Should innocent Enkidu perish?
Then Enlil responded,
Because you are responsible, Shamash, traveling with them as if you were their friend.
And that is when I woke up.
Yet already Enkidu was showing signs of illness, as the gods had marked him for death. Gilgamesh, tears flowing down his face, asked his friend,
My brother, why are they absolving me instead of you? I will pray to the gods. I will search for an answer and plead for you.
But Enkidu was weak from illness and fell back to sleep. Over the next days, Enkidu cursed the great cedar door that brought him this misfortune. He cursed the hunter who had first spotted him in the wilderness, and he wanted to curse the temple courtesan, but Shamash came to him in a vision. Do not curse the love priestess Enkidu, she who fed you and gave you drink, who clothed you and brought you to your great companion Gilgamesh, who will make the people of Uruk weep for you, who will neglect himself from grief, who will wander into the wilderness for you. Enkidu heard his words and grew calm. But after suffering another night, Enkidu had another disturbing dream. He called for Gilgamesh that he might hear it.
Listen, my friend, of the nightmare I had. The earth groaned as I saw the visage of a dark man. His hands were lion's paws, and his nails the talons of eagles. He grabbed my hair and overpowered me. I struggled to fight back and called out to you. Help me, my friend, I cried. But you did not rescue me. Then he revealed himself as an Anzu bird and seized me, dragging me into the darkness, to the house of Urkala, where those who enter do not come out, with a road that if one takes it, one never sees light, where the inhabitants drink dust and eat dirt and live all in darkness. I entered that house and saw royal crowns gathered in piles, covered in dust. These belonged to the kings who ruled the land from days of old, but now served Anu and Enlil roast meats and baked goods. In the house of ashes I saw funerary priests, and sitting on her throne, the queen of the netherworld, Eresh Kagal, who looked directly at me and said,
Who has brought this one here?
Gilgamesh is horrified by this account, but watches his friends spend another 11 days in agony. Enkidu laments how the gods have robbed him of a warrior's death, but it is too late. On the 12th day, he succumbs to his illness and dies. Gilgamesh spoke to his fallen brother.
May the roads of the cedar forest mourn you. May the elders of Uruk mourn you. May the people who gave you their blessings mourn you. May the wild animals and all creatures mourn you. May the pure Euphrates and the mountains mourn you. Enkidu, I mourn you.
And he addressed the elders of the city.
Hear me, O men of Uruk. I mourn my friend. I weep like a wailing woman. I shriek in anguish. He was the axe at my side, the bow at my arm, the shield in front of me. Why does he not hear me now?
He touched Enkidu's chest, but did not feel a heartbeat. And he swooped down over his friend, covering him like a bride would, crying in pain. He called to his artisans to fashion a golden statue of his friend, that he would always be remembered. For 7 nights he paced endlessly back and forth, and tore at his hair and ripped at his clothes in a frenzied manner. In this state did he mourn over his friend, until on the 7th night he saw the worm crawl from Enkidu's nose. Gilgamesh recoiled in fear, because the Anunnaki, the judges of the dead, had truly taken his friend. This deeply shook Gilgamesh, and he spoke.
I too am going to die. Am I not like Enkidu? Sorrow fills my core as I fear death. But I shall roam the wilderness as my brother did. I will set out to the realm of Utnapishtim with all haste.
He dressed himself in dog hides and let his hair go unkempt as he went on his journey to see the immortal Utnapishtim, he who survived the flood and was granted everlasting life from the gods, he who lives in the land where the sun rises. And Gilgamesh did travel far, until he reached the summits of Mashu, the mountain of the twin peaks, which guards the vault of heaven and the entrances to the underworld. When he approached, he bolstered his courage, for guarding the gates were 2 monsters, a scorpion man and his wife. The wife spoke first.
Here is one who is 2/3 god and 1/3 human.
The scorpion man then spoke. Why have you come here, part god? I wish to understand the purpose of your journey. Gilgamesh spoke.
I come to seek the counsel of Utnapishtim, who has found the secret of life. I wish to know this too.
Never has a mortal man done this, Gilgamesh. To travel through the mountain would take 12 days in utter darkness, and I cannot permit you to try this. But Gilgamesh's pleas were so great that the scorpion people permitted him entrance. And as warned, the darkness grew thick and suffocating. Yet Gilgamesh pressed on for days into the gloom, until on the 12th day he emerged from the mountain into a garden of light and beauty, where trees bore carnelian and ruby, and the leaves were lapis lazuli. And on the edges of the garden was a great sea, and on the shore of this sea was the tavern of Siduri, the veiled barmaid, who spied Gilgamesh, haggardly, unwashed, and dressed in tattered rags, approaching. She ran into her tavern and bolted the door shut, but Gilgamesh heard this sound and growled to her.
Barmaid, you flee from my appearance, but if you do not let me in, I will smash in your door and break your lock. I am Gilgamesh, slayer of Humbaba, killer of the bull of heaven.
Siduri cautiously opened the door and spoke to him, saying,
If you are truly Gilgamesh, why are you so emaciated and fatigued? Why is there such sadness about you?
Barmaid, why should I not look emaciated and gripped with sadness? My friend Enkidu. We destroyed Humbaba together, and the bull. My friend, whom I love deeply, who went through every hardship with me, has died. But will I share his fate? Now I make my way to Utnapishtim. Tell me the way to him. If it is by sea, so be it.
Siduri spoke back.
Why should you seek him out, Gilgamesh? Stay and let your belly be full. Let me give you clean clothes, and wash your hair and body, and please you.
But Gilgamesh would have none of her offerings, and pressed her again for answers. Siduri relented.
Gilgamesh, beyond the sea lies the waters of death, which none but Shamash can cross. But if you must, go to the forest and seek Ur-Shanabi, the ferryman. He knows the way through. Show him your face and challenge him to give you passage. but return to me if he refuses you."
And Gilgamesh grabbed his axe and made for the forest, where he smashed the stone things and Urnu snakes which blocked his passage. He finally found Urshanabi and told him of his sorrowful tale. "I would take you, Gilgamesh, but your own hands are your undoing. You have destroyed the stone things and the Urnu snakes which protected my boat. Now you must go into the forest and cut 300 poles of 60 cubits. Paint them with bitumen on the sockets and return them to me." Gilgamesh set to this task and returned to Urshanabi. They boarded the boat and went out. A voyage of a month and a half elapsed until they approached the waters of death. "Hold firm, Gilgamesh, and take a punting pole, but do not let the waters of death touch you." And so Gilgamesh used the poles to navigate the waters, breaking all of them in the process, and using his hide shirt as a sail. And watching from the distant shores was Utnapishtim, curious as to who this stranger was. Finally Gilgamesh made it safely to the shore, approaching him and telling him the tale he told Siduri.
"And that is why I seek Utnapishtim. I have traveled far and slew animals of the wilderness to be here."
Utnapishtim spoke back. "Why are you full of woe, Gilgamesh? You are made of the flesh of gods and man, but all men must die eventually. You have toiled hard to get here, but look at the cost. Your body is worn out and racked with grief. You have shortened your life. Gilgamesh, hear me. No one can see the face of death or know its time. It is in the nature of mankind to die. Do we build a house to last forever? Do rivers rise higher forever? The gods have set this to be, but have not made the time of death known." Gilgamesh listened to these words and knew at last who was addressing him, and he spoke.
"I know now who you are, but your appearance. You are not so different from me. I was resolved to fight you for this knowledge, but please, tell me how you stand here with everlasting life."
Utnapishtim spoke to Gilgamesh. "So be it, Gilgamesh. I will reveal to you the secret of the gods. Once I lived in Shuruppak, a very old city, as you know, as did the gods. Enlil had called a council in secret with Anu, Ninurtal, Inugi, and Ea. Enlil had decided to destroy humanity with a great flood, as he had grown tired of the noise of the city. But Ea broke the vow of secrecy and came to me, commanding, 'Man of Shuruppak, tear down your house and build an ark. Abandon your riches and seek life. Load the ark with your family and every living thing and make them go. Build the ark with dimensions 10 cubits in height and 6 decks. I obeyed, but asked our lord Ea what I should tell the people of the city, whom I needed to help me build it. He said to me, 'Tell them you are leaving the city because Enlil hates you, and that when you leave, the city will have riches and prosperity rained upon it.' With this lie, I had the city men construct my ark. I gave away my wealth to them. I slaughtered bulls and sheep every day, and they drank my beer, wine, and oil. And on the 7th day we launched the ark. I made my kin and family go onto the boat, and the animals of the field, the wild beasts of the land, and the children of my craftsmen. Then the black clouds approached over the horizon. Adad, the thunder god, roared within it. Nergal of the underworld broke down doorposts, and Ninurta made the dikes flood. The Anunnaki lifted their torches and set fire to the land. Then the south wind blew, overwhelming our people with water. It covered the very tallest mountains and made the gods scared, running to the heavens, cowering like dogs outside their outer wall. Ishtar was the first to weep for her lost children, and even the Anunnaki cried. The gods realized the error of their ways and sat together crying. For 6 days and 7 nights we rolled through the water, never sleeping, and I realized all was lost, and I knew sorrow. But on the 7th day the storm stopped, and the ark was seized by the mountain Nisir, and could not move. I sent out a dove, but it could not find a place to land, and so returned to me. I sent out a swallow, but it too returned. Finally I sent a raven, and it did not return. The waters slithered back to where they came from, and I released everything to the 4 corners. I sacrificed a sheep and offered incense to the gods. They were drawn to the savory smell, and gathered like flies over a corpse. Ninhursag, mother of us all, lamented the god's decision, and cursed Enlil's name for his violence. But when Enlil appeared, and saw the ark, he was furious. How has life survived? No man was meant to live through the devastation. Who broke our solemn vow? And then Ea turned to Enlil and spoke. How could you send the flood to punish all? Punish the one who commits the crime. Send lions to diminish the people, or wolves, or plague, or famine, but not a flood to destroy all people. I did not reveal the secret of the gods, but rather our wise Utnapishtim had a vision of our plan. And Enlil listened and understood Ea's words, and came to my wife and me, grasping our hands. He made us kneel and touched our forehead, blessing us. You are a human being, but now you and your wife will become as the gods. You will live far away at the mouth of the rivers and have everlasting life. And this is my tale, Gilgamesh. So now, who will convene the gods on your behalf and grant you everlasting life? Test yourself. See if you can stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. And Gilgamesh sat down to prepare for this trial, and as soon as he did, sleep fell upon him. Utnapishtim turned to his wife. Look at this hero who wanted eternal life. Look at how easily he falls asleep. But his wife urged him on.
Wake the man and send him home safely.
Utnapishtim spoke. Mankind is deceptive and will lie to you. Come, bake bread for him and set it by his head, and draw on the wall each day that he sleeps. 7 days passed before she touched Gilgamesh, and he awoke with a startle.
Ah! As soon as I was ready to fall asleep, you touched me and alerted me.
But Utnapishtim was ready for Gilgamesh. Look closer, Gilgamesh. Count your loaves of bread. The first one is completely dried out. The second one is stale. The third one moist. The fourth has turned white. The fifth is gray. The sixth is rotten, and the seventh... Gilgamesh spoke out.
Woe is me! What can I do, Utnapishtim? Where can I go? Death dwells in my house, and wherever I set foot, death follows.
Utnapishtim spoke next to Urshanabi. You will take Gilgamesh away from here, and never return. The harbor will reject you. The shore will deny you. Take this man and bring him to the washing place. Bathe him and throw his hides into the sea. Give him new garments, that he may go to his city as a king. After this had happened, Gilgamesh and Urshanabi made their way to the boat, but Utnapishtim's wife turned to her husband and spoke.
Gilgamesh came here exhausted after his hard journey. What can you give him to return to his home with honor?
Utnapishtim, realizing he was being inhospitable, stopped Gilgamesh. Wait! I will disclose to you one more secret of the gods. There is a plant whose roots grow deep on the ocean bed. It will prick your hand like a bramble, but if you get it, you will become a young man again. Gilgamesh and Urshanabi found the spot in the seas where the plant grows, and Gilgamesh tied stones to his feet and dove beneath the waves. Upon finding the plant, he grabbed it and cut loose the rocks. With the plant in his possession, he speaks to Urshanabi.
Urshanabi, this is the plant of openings by which man can achieve life. I will bring it to Uruk and split it amongst the elders. Its name is the old man will be made young. I will eat it too and return to the condition of my youth.
Once they reached the shoreline, the two set out back to the city. At 30 leagues they made camp by a spring of cool water. Gilgamesh went down and bathed in it. But while he was there, a snake smelled the perfume of the plant and carried it off, leaving behind its old skin. That night Gilgamesh sat down, weeping to Urshanabi.
For whom have I labored for? For whom has the blood of my heart dried up? I have not won any good for myself, but rather for that serpent.
Having failed to procure the plant, the two traveled another 50 leagues before finally reaching the city of Uruk. Gilgamesh turned to the ferryman and spoke.
Go up, Urshanabi, to the walls of Uruk. Inspect its foundation. Examine the brickwork closely. Even the core of the brick is kiln-fired. Did not the 7 sages themselves lay down its foundation?
In Uruk, the house of Ishtar, 1 part is city, 1 part gardens, 1 part clay pits. 3 parts, including the clay pits, make up Uruk. And that, dear listeners, is where our story ends. Almost shockingly abrupt, really. It's not a happy ending, but it's not a sad one either. Gilgamesh appears to have come to terms with his mortality, or has chosen to ignore his failure in seeking immortality. Or maybe this was never meant to be the end of the story, and we've just never found the missing conclusion. Regardless of how you interpret it, Gilgamesh is at least content to show off the walls of Uruk, his proudest achievement. Perhaps he realized that even after he is long gone, his walls will still survive, and that is as close as he'll get to immortality. I've excluded the 12th tablet of this tale because it does not fit into the flow of the story. It tells of Enkidu going to the underworld to retrieve a drum of Gilgamesh's, but becoming trapped there. His ghost, however, is able to tell Gilgamesh of all the horrors that await him in the afterlife, and predictably, Gilgamesh is terrified. Since Enkidu dies of illness in the regular epic, no one's quite sure how this fits in, least of all me. But still, it's worth a read to complete your Gilgamesh mythos. There's also a brief passage on another fractured tablet about how King Aga of Kish lays siege to Uruk, but Gilgamesh uses diplomacy to become friends with Aga and defend his city. It's not very long, but again, if you want that full experience and all. What can we make of the great Gilgamesh? He who is 2/3 god and 1/3 human, which has always confused me until I realized his father was a man who became a god, who has a child with Ninsun who's already a god, which makes Gilgamesh 2/3 god? That's the best explanation I can muster. But despite his divine parentage, Gilgamesh is not exactly a shining example of nobility. He's extremely emotional, violent, narcissistic, prone to fits of whining, abusive to women, obsessed with his mortality, and overall, a not-so-pleasant person. The story opens up, and he's the bad guy. Oppressing his people, having his way with brides. Is this the sort of guy you want to read about? Yet Gilgamesh fits right at home with our more well-known heroes. Hercules was notorious for his lust and violence. He once killed his music teacher after being reprimanded for his poor skills, and of course, under the curse of Hera, his entire family. Beowulf is as arrogant as they come, and that hubris is his downfall. And Cú Chulainn of Irish lore was so violently berserk in battle that eventually the sons of his fallen foes team up to kill him. Heroes are supposed to be extreme, to show us what excess can bring. They're not necessarily someone to idolize, but to be used as an example, for good or bad. And yes, I realize my examples are all Western heroes. I'd love to hear from a listener who can give me a non-Western example, as I don't know very much about them. I thought about Rama or Krishna as examples, but there's two problems with using them. One, they don't really have the flaws of Western heroes. And two, they are still very much worshipped in Hinduism. As far as I know, the cult of Gilgamesh is long gone, so he's fair game. But Rama and Krishna are both avatars of Vishnu, one of the 5 central deities to Hindus. So yeah, kind of a big deal. But depending on how well this episode is received, we might just have to look at the Mahayana or the Bhagavad Gita when we get to India. But I'm going a little off track right now. So, ultimately, Gilgamesh is a privileged man who spends his whole life led to believe how great and wonderful he is, and no one challenged him on this. So when he learns that he too will die, this turns his whole world upside down. But in the end, he learns that the meaning of life is really just to enjoy the ride. Worrying about the end will just make it come faster. And what happens when Gilgamesh does die? Well, supposedly he becomes a judge in the afterlife, but on Earth his funeral was probably similar to other Sumerian kings. The texts say that he ordered his tomb dug under the Euphrates, and the citizens of Uruk diverted the river long enough to build it. When he died, he was buried with many personal possessions, and like other kings, his servants and wife. Yep, the Sumerians practiced the sacrificial burial form a lot. Servants would file into a tomb, assume a position, and drink poison, joining their king in the afterlife. Charming. This is the last the world knew of Gilgamesh, or so it would seem, because in 2003, a German archaeological team claimed to have found the lost tomb of Gilgamesh. News agencies all over the world reported this amazing find, and then nothing. No, literally, I can't find a shred of evidence as to what happened next. No story confirming they proved it was Gilgamesh's tomb or not. The closest I came to finding out what happened was a conspiracy site that discovered information that the U.S. Army took control of the site during the Iraq War to gather DNA from Gilgamesh's corpse in order to clone him for a super soldier project. Sounds legit to me. Next time on the podcast History of Our World, We return to Sumer. For a people connected by language, culture, and religion, they had no qualms fighting each other for supremacy. And despite the peacekeeping efforts of one city, the fighting would continue unabated until one man decided he had had enough of the petty squabbles of these so-called kings. Swooping in from the north, he conquered the land of Sumer and ushered in a new age of order and prosperity. After all, why bother being a king when you could be an emperor? So join me for the next chapter as we introduce Sargon of Akkad.